uh, the quarterback position, because Sam Howell finally got a bite at the apple at the end of the season. But I mean, let's call it for what it is. That Wentz experiment was a colossal failure. Taylor Heineke was good in stretches, but then they went back to Carson Wentz, and he cost them a playoff spot. And it seemed like Ron Rivera forgot that they needed to win in order to get into the playoffs, potentially. So they need to address the quarterback position. Now, whether or not they stick with Sam Howell, who, sure, he looked great in that last game of the season, but it was also the last game of the season. Like, we don't know what he's looked like during the entire season. We haven't seen the practices, but I'm guessing like they like him enough to potentially have him be the guy. But like I said, the earlier part of the segment, you can rewind and listen to it. If Dan Snyder went after Lamar Jackson to be the quarterback and address that issue, pair him with Eric Bieniemy, I won't be shocked at all. But that's definitely one route they could go. Not too sure if they'll go through the draft, but maybe in free agency, maybe they'll talk themselves into getting Jimmy Garoppolo. But I mean,
Garoppolo.
They're going to have to address that quarterback issue, which, God, it's just the commies are so bad. And then the other two, it's both on the defensive side of the football. It's going to be, is Chase Young going to hit that potential that he was drafted to be? And I understand he had a pretty bad knee injury, the ACL, the PCL, and I think he tore another ligament in there. So he had a long road to recovery coming back, and he played like 1 or 2 games last season. But I mean, he is going to have to step up and fill the holes massively for this defensive side of football, which was, I mean, bottom of the league in pretty much every statistical category, blatantly horrid in generating turnovers in the secondary, which is going to be my other part of the defense that they need to work on, is the cornerback position or the linebacker. I mean, they need to get some bodies back there that can generate turnovers and take the heat off of the defensive line that really was just Daron Payne at times, and Jonathan Allen at times, really getting any pressure up front. So they're gonna have to address that. And then kind of like, I'm throwing a fourth bullet point in there, but like it's blatantly obvious for this team, the offensive line, because they let Brandon Sheriff walk last year in free agency, and he went to Jacksonville. And Sheriff, in my opinion, is probably top 5 offensive lineman in the NFL today. They let him walk, and that offensive line was god awful. Like it was a sieve. I'm pretty sure they were probably the only team in the NFL that was at double-digit offensive lineman combinations throughout the season. And like a 17 weeks in the season, they hit double digits on different combos. So the offensive line is a massive hole that needs to be plugged as well too.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you with my number one bullet point for the offseason, man. The Commanders, another offseason, another question mark at quarterback. Like, I feel like this is 6-7 years in a row where we really have no idea who's going to be the quarterback. Listen, it's very simple. You've got to find a franchise quarterback of the future. You can't just keep doing this over and over again on a yearly basis. On top of that, looking at the roster, like Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, that is sneaky, could be the best wide receiver room in the NFL. That's right up there with some of the best weapons in the NFL. So whatever you got to do to get a franchise quarterback, I like your idea earlier of going after Lamar Jackson hardcore, even though, it could be an FU on the way out by the owner, but still it would plug in a nice quarterback at that position. So that's got to happen. You got to find a quarterback. Number 2, you can't let Daron Payne walk in free agency. Like, you hit on it. He's one of the best defensive tackles on the market, and it's important you bring him back. Him with Sweat, and obviously when Chase Young gets healthy, that's formidable. Like, you can't really mess with that. And then number 3, the back end of the defense. It's horrid. Like, you've got to go after a cornerback hardcore at number 16. Obviously it's a little early for draft talk, but I've got a couple guys in mind. Illinois cornerback Devin Witherspoon or South Carolina cornerback Cam Smith. I think both guys are perfect for that fit. Long-rangey cornerbacks that could do really well in that system.
Yep. And then, of course, on top of that, change of ownership.
Yeah.
Get the bad juju out. But can you also imagine, like, the Commanders, like, that stadium is god awful. Like, FedEx Field is a dump. but like to go back to Lamar real quick, like you bring Lamar in there, you're
Mhm.
now going to actually have home fans in the stands. It's not
Mhm.
going to be an easy road
Yeah.
game that people are going to fly into to see like the Dallas Cowboys or whatever. You'll be able to have your own home fans at FedEx Field rocking. And then looking down the road, like having Lamar Jackson as your quarterback is going to potentially open doors to get new like land deals so you can have a new stadium. And this is also assuming that Dan Snyder's not going to be there anymore. But
Yeah.
you have Lamar Jackson there. That's going to help the value of the franchise, and that's going to help with potentially getting a land deal because
Yeah.
FedEx is god awful. We've all seen the videos of sewage coming
Yeah.
down and like
Yep.
it's like a 120 seats, 120,000 seat stadium that they like
Yep.
they have to close up. It's like the Oakland Coliseum for the Oakland A's in baseball, but like all the like on the East Coast version of that. It's like a toxic waste dump. They need to get a new stadium. I think Lamar Jackson could help that.
Yeah. And I know earlier you brought it up and you were joking, but the more I think about it, I think Daniel Snyder, as a last ditch effort to try to win some fans back in his corner,
I'm
could
telling
make that
you.
big swing. Imagine making that big swing for Lamar Jackson and all the negative press, everything that's happened the last 6 years in Washington. It doesn't get washed away, but people start thinking about him in a different light. Like, winning cures everything. Simply put, if the Washington football team started winning, I'm sorry, Washington Commanders now, if the Washington Commanders started winning next year with Lamar Jackson, it would cure a lot of problems for Daniel Snyder.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I'm telling you, it is not beyond the realm of
Yeah. Yeah,
possibility
that's a
that
good point, Puma. That's a good
that
point. Clap, clap,
Dan
clap.
Snyder is going to open that checkbook and say, "Oh, House Committee of Investigations. Oh,
Yeah.
Washington Post. Bafangul. I'm going to get this guy. And either like the NFL is going to have to suck on it, or I'll just be like,
Mhm.
hey, Bank of America, let's actually do that deal with Jeff Bezos now." And
Yeah.
in the words of that coach and that gif or that meme, tell him to bring me my money.
Absolutely, absolutely.